National Park should represent a vignette of primitive America.
And this really became the staple for a generation of scientifically trained ecologists in their management of national park lands. What they sought to do was to reconstitute wildlife populations and distributions within a park that might closely approximate the diversity and arrangements that were present 180 years ago.
If Yellowstone was going to be returned to a vignette of primitive America, then Aldo Leopold's proposal for the reintroduction of the wolf was finally on the agenda.
Many people have questioned that Yellowstone might have had too many ungulates, too many elk, and what was their impact on the ecosystem. And perhaps wolves could weigh in on that situation and change the dynamic naturally. And so Yellowstone really was some of the best wolf habitat in the world without any wolves here.
But it was still decades before Aldo Leopold's dream was realized.
I can remember when I was wearing my ranger hat in the 1970s and giving my campfire programs that the restoration of the wolf seemed like some fantastically remote thing that would happen in a better age. You know, that we would have to come a long way as a society before we would be prepared to overcome all of our prejudices and do the right thing. So you can imagine how I felt when it happened.
In January 1995, 6 wild wolves were brought from Canada to Yellowstone National Park.
I was there, you know, I remember the trailer was maybe 2 cars ahead of the car I was in, and off to the left I could see a cow elk watching it go by. And you think, you don't know, you know, you can't know, but you'll figure it out. You know, it was things like that that allowed it to finally sink in and make me realize this is really happening. And then I was just jazzed. I was so excited, you know, I had to run around.
The wolves were allowed to acclimatize in pens for a few weeks before they were released into the park to roam free.
And that summer I was hiking with a friend, and we were staying in one of the backcountry patrol cabins. And about 2 in the morning we got up to answer the call of nature, quite by chance at the same time. And we're both standing outside the cabin when we hear this long, sustained, throaty howl. And I remember thinking, I am so lucky to be here to hear that. This first year of the reintroduction, when that sound has essentially not been heard in Yellowstone for more than 60 years.
Not everyone greeted the wolves with enthusiasm, particularly once their numbers increased and they spread outside the park.
When you're a rancher in the American West raising cattle and you've got wolves that are killing calves, you see those wolves as nothing but competitors to your livelihood. They're undermining your way of life. If you're not a rancher, if you're a tourist, if you're wanting to go to the wilderness and experience wilderness as it is, then nothing is nobler, nothing is wilder than a pack of wolves running across that landscape.
For many Americans, the wolf has become the iconic wilderness species, a romantic symbol of wildness. And now wolves are transforming the Yellowstone ecosystem.
We're finding that wolves are keystone species. And what that is, an animal that occurs in fairly low numbers or at low density that has large effects. The importance of wolves can be seen in the recovery of some of the vegetation that we have here in Yellowstone. Plants like aspen, willow, and cottonwood not growing for a very long time. Since wolves have been restored, they've started growing more.
The resurgence of willow has allowed songbirds and beavers to make a comeback, and the dams beavers build with willow trees provide habitats for countless other creatures.
Do wolves have something to do with that? Wolves eat elk, and elk eat willow. And wolves may have changed that dynamic.
The return of the wolf to Yellowstone is for many the fulfillment of an ecological vision of what national parks and wilderness should be about. That is, vignettes of primitive America. Areas that are maintained in the ecological state in which they were found by the first white visitors. And yet, there has always been something missing from the ecological vision of wilderness.
Wolves were never a keystone species. Humans were actually the keystone species. The humans were the important predators, they were the keystone predators, and they were the keystone fire starters on it that actually created the ecosystems you think are actually natural. National parks turned out to be entirely unnatural because you don't have humans in the system.
20th century ecological debates about wilderness took place without reference to the role American Indians had played in shaping the wild plant and animal populations that park managers and conservationists were trying to protect. It is a testimony to the power of the romantic 19th century vision of wilderness that ecologists could have been so blind.
Ecologists are human beings like all the rest of us. We inhabit cultures, and our cultures teach us to see certain things and not see certain other things. American ecology grew up with an idea of wilderness that led ecologists to seek out landscapes that were as unmodified by people as they could imagine.
In America today, the very idea of wilderness is being challenged. American Indians are fighting for the right to access national parks, to practice religious ceremonies at sacred sites, and to hunt and gather traditional wild foods. Archaeologists are revealing the full extent to which Indian tribes manipulated their environments in the past. And their findings are informing the way that ecologists manage some wilderness areas today. But the model of pristine wilderness that evolved in Yellowstone and was later applied to wild places around the world still dominates the way that most of us think about wild nature today. In the next programme, we look at how new discoveries are rewriting the history and very possibly the future of one of the last great wildernesses, the Amazon.
Stay with us, there's one more unnatural history coming up next with a trip to the amazing Amazon.